Hey there, welcome to the Expo live stream. We are here with Tomek Sułkowski from StackBlitz. How's it going, Tomek?
Hello, I'm great. I'm super excited to talk with you.
Me too. Yeah, we'll let folks roll into the chat here real quick. We'll give a couple minutes, but as we're getting started here, a question for any early comers. We're curious about your first prompt you gave an AI, specifically programming related, or the first time you asked AI to write some code for you, what it was. I'm not sure what my first prompt is. I can think of what my first prompt I gave to Bolt a couple of weeks ago was. But yeah, I'm curious what if you have any memory of that, Tomek. I'm sure you've given a billion prompts to AI at this point for programming. But what's the first piece of code you asked it to write you?
Oh, I don't remember at this point. It's almost like, I know the one that was most mind-blowing. I remember when Bolt switched to like a new Sonnet model. We're going like very quickly, very deep. But I asked it to create a Spotify screen, like Spotify clone, and it did it like exactly. It was like almost pixel perfect thing, and that blew my mind and everyone else's mind too. So yeah,
Oh,
make
that's
me a
awesome.
Spotify. It's like
I'm thinking whatever mine was, it was probably my actual first prompt. It was almost certainly TypeScript related, because when AI was first starting to be able to code anything at all, I was very much not into TypeScript at all. And I was just like, make everything in any. And then it actually, gave me, I think it probably gave me my first like motivation to really like, okay, I'm going to get comfortable with this, because whenever I got into a hole where I'm like, I have no idea how to type that thing's like 3 generics deep or something like that. And it often would figure it out. So that was a lot of fun. I'm thinking like in terms of like asking for whole programs or interfaces a couple of weeks ago, I'm pretty new to the AI app generation, and Bolt was really the first one I tried. And I asked it to start scaffolding out a clone of the original Dragon Quest for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And of course it put in like, stock images and all that, which I expected to. I didn't have any art for it, but I actually got pretty far. I had it like kind of replicating a dungeon and random battles and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this is fun. I could make a lot of like, I don't know. I've always fancied myself like, what if I could make games? And I'm always like, oh, it's too hard to start. And just seeing it take care of a bunch of details that I often would get tripped up on was like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it does kind of like I did a lot of since Bolt. I did a lot of just like fun projects with my kids actually. Like, oh, let's make like MIDI sequencer or something like that.
Oh,
and
nice.
I was like, yeah, and actually that MIDI sequencer was so cool that my kid thought like, oh, we should like buy a physical one. Then we tried like a physical one, and he was like,
Oh,
no,
nice.
the Bolt thing was fun, was more cool actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, that just reminded me another early prompt, because I was trying to teach my kids some programming. They've never gotten interested in JavaScript. They like all like the visual ones where you like drag and drop the what's that, like Snap or whatever. But
Scratch,
I
yeah.
would Scratch, yeah. So I was trying to convince him to contribute to this little like Kana memorization app I was making. I was like, you could do your first pull request on my app. And so I was having him type in like Kana to Romaji mappings, like like the language, the Romance language pronunciation equivalent to the kanji or to the kana. And he got like through like a couple of them, and I gave him credit. But then like a few weeks later, I think that was the first time I installed GitHub Copilot, and I started typing the first one, and it just filled in all the kana. And I was like, oh, I just could have asked the AI.
Yeah.
All right, so we're 5 after. We got some folks rolling in. We got what a good crowd in the live stream. So we're going to formally kick this thing off. Welcome everyone to the Expo live stream. We have Tomek Sułkowski, StackBlitz founding engineer, here to talk to us about Bolt.new. How you doing, Tomek?
Yeah, I'm great. Like so happy to talk with you with like to the Expo crowds. It's like the Bolt Expo integration was the like a biggest hit since even before Bolt appeared on the map. So it's yeah, great, exciting times.
Awesome. Yeah, so I wonder if just introduce yourself, what your role is at StackBlitz. Introduce us to what is Bolt, if folks haven't heard of Bolt yet.
Sure. Yes. So I'm one of the founding engineers at StackBlitz. So joined around 2018, a long time ago, especially in web dev years. So and initially, StackBlitz was very much just like a front end kind of playground plus tool that where I was doing a bit of front-end coding, a bit of education, and then last year we switched into Bolt and like built on the whole technological core that we've developed in StackBlitz over the years. And yeah, Bolt turned out to be a big one. So, but yeah, I guess the best way to describe it is to show it. So I can show very quickly what Bolt does, what it is, and then we can go into details, especially like the technical part is, I think, quite intriguing and unique. So
yeah, let's do it. Let's get right into sharing, because I know we'll be talking a lot about the underlying, not only what you can do with AI app generation, but also the underlying technology behind StackBlitz and how it enables these things to run wholly in your browser as well. So yeah, let's get it on the screen. That sounds good.
Okay. So okay, I hope everyone can see the screen. And yeah, so this is Bolt, and we can ask it to do something. Let's take this music sequencer idea, and we can say build me a music sequencer, and that's it. And so the idea for this came up to us when already you could do things like that, ask for things like that to like ChatGPT or even with GitHub Copilot. But the biggest problem or like challenge was that if you are using like, for example, Copilot, you are already like a developer, you have all figured out, or more or less everything figured out, especially the setup, the local dev environment configuration, right? So this is more of adding something to your already created development environment. On the flip side, if you're using ChatGPT, it would create some code for you, but only on the browser, but it doesn't work, right? So you'd have to copy paste it into, again, your setup. So we already know in StackBlitz how to run web apps in a browser, including Node.js, actually. So we thought, what if we combined basically the two and added the chat experience with the environment with runtime code. So as you can see, you won't be able probably to hear this, but it will just be distracting me because it plays no sounds.
It looks really good from here, though.
Yeah. The even like there's like a subtle animation.
I feel like I can feel it.
Yeah. I mean, I can make it available. So if you want to, I don't know if I can post the code, the link, but you can use this link and play with it already. Yeah, so very high level. This is Bolt building with JavaScript technology in the browser with the AI, zero setup. You just jump in and do it.
Yeah. So that I feel like we should dwell on that point for a little bit, because that blew my mind when I realized that, okay, we have a chat, we have an ID. I think a number of us are used to, it is still pretty novel having the ID in your browser, but a lot of us are used to the one where it's actually like logging into a virtual machine, and you're talking about paying for minutes and all those things like that. But in the case of StackBlitz, it's actually entirely running in your browser. So, and that I totally would work on an app in Bolt for like days and didn't realize that. And then when I did, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that was possible. So yeah, I was wondering if you could unpack that a little bit. Like explain StackBlitz to us, for folks who have never heard of this concept, or just like, what is this wizardry you're showing on the screen?
Sure, of course. So if you go to StackBlitz.com and log in, which you can do for free, you will have like a set of technologies that you can run. Initially, when StackBlitz launched in 2017, that was specifically for running things like quick workshops, coding workshops for Angular and React. We basically could handle Angular, React, and I think Ionic back then. These were the days. And but that was very custom technology. The upside was that it's fast. You just go to a browser, you just click a link, and you have the environment. We would be using something like a Monaco editor for editing the thing. And then there was like System.js that would assemble that into a running thing. But it was very custom. So we had to, every time, a new Angular or React version would come up, we would have some patching to do. So around, I think that was 2019, or maybe later, probably 2021, we created a technology that we called WebContainers. And what WebContainers are basically a very lightweight OS that runs in the browser.
Wow.
As OS, what I mean is basically like you have a file system, network layer, what else, and maybe some programs or applications that you are used to having, like Git or some other like bash commands. And so I could show you one of the, actually let's do one of the full stack things, like as, for example, Astro, maybe, to show you just how the UI looks. And as you can see, like this is already like, this looks like what you would see when you scaffolded an app in locally. But the trick is that let's make some changes and see it. Of course, it's like super fast. But what I can do, and let me double check that I'm using. Okay, I'm in a different browser, so I can actually go offline. And make some changes. This error is just because we can turn it off later, but like this error is just because we are persisting. We are trying to persist that, right, into our database. But the changes themselves, actually, if I don't save, they are automatically, updated. Hello, Expo. So as you can see, like this is running locally when I'm offline, sometimes on a plane or something, and I can still, in this terminal, for example, I can do things like ls, right, or whatever else. I'm blanking on more Linux.
I'm like rmdir.
Yes.
PWD. There we go. PWD.
Oh, that should work. Yes, as well. So as you can see, and like it's so there are multiple profits to that, because it's like, of course, the latency is like as minimal as it can be.
Mm-hmm.
What is also, and by the way, if you want to do it for like very custom, just empty environment, there's a very cool link that we provided. It's just called node.new. The .new domains are quite popular. So it's just like this empty project with just 2 files, and you can run it. And so what is really cool is that we what we didn't expect was that it's being used by people who are, for example, on low-end machines sometimes. Because if you think about it, when you run it locally, when you run like a dev environment like this, you have a browser where you see what you're building, right? So that's one Chrome. Then you have Node server, so that's its own V8, right?
Yeah.
And then you're using a cursor like a VS Code or something like this, which is again, that Electron.
It's Chrome all the way down.
Yes. So you have like multiple instances of it. So what we discovered is that even though it's like, even for us, it's not intuitive, but web apps are so fast. And people started using StackBlitz because they were on like a low-tier, low-end computers that had problems with running traditional setups even. Because here we're using just the one V8 core, and it's running the IDE, the web containers, so like dev servers, and well, obviously the browser where you're running it at. So it's super efficient in like resource management. Yeah, I geeked out, but it's really like mind blowing.
No, that's amazing. I really appreciate I wouldn't even call it an analogy, because it sounds like it just is the way it works, describing it as you wrote an operating system on top of the browser. Like, number one, that's wicked cool. I feel like there's a whole category of like, especially like YouTube videos I love watching, where they're like, we stuck an operating system on a thing that shouldn't have an operating system. Like a few weeks ago, it was like someone who put Unix on a Famicom disk system.
All right.
Yeah, it didn't do very much. Like, it pretty much only did like PWD and LS, but it did something. And number one, that's cool. Number two, it's like, it helps wrap your mind like, oh yeah, these things are all running, V8. They're all running the JavaScript interpretation backbone of Chrome. So why couldn't it run a whole OS? Why couldn't it do this? It's such a flexible language and engine and runtime. And then it made me appreciate like little things like, like a lot of online editors, they'll do away with the save button because saving is kind of an anachronistic concept in terms of like a lot of our live editing we do. But the save button actually still works on StackBlitz. And that I think that drives home that you're working on a file system. So that was, I really appreciate that explanation. And my mind is blown even more.
Yeah, so I'm still like, this is a cool thing about working in StackBlitz. Like you don't get used to it. It's always like so exciting. Plus, every now and then we have breakthroughs and things like Bolt, like Expo, which like raises the stakes, right? So this is like, yeah, incredible. So basically, if you take this, you can make better imagine or get a better sense of what Bolt is doing behind the scenes. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so I guess where were we on Bolt then?
Yeah, actually. So I think I can get back to when we announced it. That was in October, and it blew pretty pretty big hole in the Twitterverse, at least. And what was very surprising to us, besides the fact that, like, okay, we were super happy that people understood the value, is that it, like, in the StackBlitz days, this screen screams a developer, right? Hardcore. I'm like, running. I'm doing LS after all, so like I'm hardcore, right? But it is very, like, very much focused on developer needs. We do also have a very big chunk of our user base that are using it for design systems, but it's more of those, like, technical aspects of design system, like running like storybooks or visual reproduction, things like that. But what was surprising really to us was that Bolt got picked up by non-developers. And currently, the biggest part of our user base is non-technical. So that was, yeah, its own set of challenges too, because we suddenly had to start, like, talking like a bit differently, which is, I guess, good always to like explain in simple terms things, but also onboarding non-developers to development terms, because at some point it is beneficial to understand what runs and why does it run or doesn't it.
Yeah, the Bolt interface kind of splits the difference between, like, you're talking to an AI developer, but you're also being, front and center. Here's the code that it's building, and even as it describes, as you enter prompts and it actually describes the files it's building, it's kind of bringing home that, like, okay, this is the scope of what you asked for.
Yeah, exactly. So you can, like, for example, like here, just to drive the point, like, you can go directly to this code. So this is, again, like a lightweight StackBlitz like editor, and you can see what happens. This is actually editable. There is a terminal, so that's pretty unique actually, because like, normally you only get the artifacts, and maybe you will get like a preview in like similar apps similar to Bolt, but in this case you have like the whole thing. So you can even actually go into, pretty much switch to hands-on mode and start editing this like the same way, right? I need to save this one.
Cool.
Right, so yeah, which is sometimes quite useful. Sometimes people even do it to save some tokens. Instead of making AI make that simple change, I'll just jump into the code and experiment, especially since it's like so fast, right?
Yeah.
And
let me throw out there real quick to the audience, since I think I forgot to mention it earlier, but if you have any questions for Tomek about the Bolt Expo integration, about coding with AI, we have a couple good ones queuing up that are, what does the future hold in this brave new world that where the computers can make computer programs for us. Yeah, post those questions in the chat in whatever form you want. We'll try to get it to as many as possible. Sorry, proceed.
No, that's a good call out, and I hope we'll have like tons of questions, because like it's so, like, again, this is so interesting always to get some interesting questions from both ends of the spectrum, really, like developers and non-developers.
So let me throw one out there. So you first got started with having it make like web apps, of course, and then more recently at its Expo integration has been added, so it can start to make a mobile app in Expo. And I was curious, like, what are like the special considerations there? Like, what is it? What went into? And I know like our team and your team were collaborating on this and answering questions about the Expo stack to help you all out. But like, what kind of changes, or like what kind of technological hurdles did you have to overcome to have it start working with Expo?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just for context, I just wanted to give like huge props to the Expo team. This when we announced it, like this month, just 2 weeks ago. It's like incredible. It feels like it was like a half a year already. But when we announced it, this was the biggest launch basically that we ever had. People are still so excited. And if I can just show you, I think was the demo that we used for this. I basically did a very that was also like something that we were testing on. I might not be able to find it. Oh, okay, in my. Anyways, I can actually just prompt it probably faster. Oh, and just this is a very typical thing that I found myself doing. Oftentimes, instead of like looking for a very specific tool, I find myself just instead going to Bolt and building that tool, which is on one end like a very big like a nerd snipe, and I end up like spending 4 hours on that. But on the other hand, it's like so empowering. I am a developer. I have like 20 years of experience, but I would never have gone into like local and start building this, because that would take me like 2 weeks probably, and I don't have that time. But like instead, so anyways, going back to that, I think it was let's make mobile Twitter clone, and let it think on that. Okay. So what was the question? Okay, the question, your original question. Sorry, I'm like so pumped about all this. So a big part of the challenge, for us, it wasn't only about taking, like some AI APIs that like Anthropic or someone like this, or partner provides, and sending the prompts, getting the output and putting it into web containers. There's a lot of interesting challenges that you have to do around that. And one of them is very often, for example, like a very typical challenge is that AIs are by nature lazy. It's probably because they are modeled after humans. but when you talk with ChatGPT or something like this, you will often get like, oh, and this code remains unchanged, right? And we can't get a file that ends in the middle with like a comment, this code remains unchanged, right? And there is no way to like force AIs to not do it, to like not be lazy. So other than like doing very custom layers on top of it, different kind of logic, like doing static analysis on top of it, and things like that. So that's a very general problem that we have to solve for every technology. For things like Expo specifically, it's a very modern and dynamic ecosystem. So we have to oftentimes teach AI additionally what are the best practices, how it should structure things, because otherwise it's like a trial and error by users. So there's a lot of that kind of like custom prompt engineering that goes into that.
And so that when you talk about the prompt engineering, that's the actual prompt that you can like download as part of like, it comes out if you export this project from StackBlitz. Is that correct?
So there are like several layers to that.
Okay.
There's like a system, I think, or core prompt, whatever. I don't know if we have an official name for it, but it's something that is like in the Bolt engine, let's say. Additionally, you will have, and for that you do not have access to, because like it would be like then easy to break. It's so hard to set it up properly with AIs. It's just like sometimes they behave like a little baby, so you have to know like the good tricks, and you wouldn't want like to small changes on user end to impact their experience. But on top of that, you have a global system prompt that you can customize if you have like specific practices or sometimes even assets. For example, in my case, when I built a demo app, I wanted to use a Bolt logo by default if I don't specify otherwise. So I added it to the global system prompt. But also for every project, you get a fresh, like a project level prompt that will be added to every instruction that you send to AI. So in our, let's actually see what we got.
Yeah,
here.
I wanted to see how this thing comes out.
Yeah,
not bad.
Let's turn on a bigger display, and see, so it's even, yeah, this is like this is crazy.
That's not a bad first shot. That's better than my first shot, that's for sure, when you asked me to make a Twitter interface.
Yeah, it has the routing and everything. That's insane. And what is really cool is that you can like just like that preview it on your mobile. So yeah, this is crazy.
Awesome. I think we have some good questions coming up here. I'm struggling which ones to start with, because I feel like we could go in a million different directions. I think the one, actually, let's start with this one, because this is an interesting question, because I'm actually not really sure what the answer is. I think I know how, but what? Yeah. So what would it be like if you already have an existing project, to import it? Would you be like importing it into StackBlitz and then opening it in Bolt, or how would that work?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question, because we have several answers to it. Ideally, this would be a GitHub project that you could work with in Bolt directly. This is I'm mentioning it up front because we do not have it at this point, but this is a very recurring question. If you just want to open a project in Bolt, but it is available as a GitHub project, you can, let's get some, I don't know what that is, but we're here. So let's say that this is your project, and you want to maybe not open the repository, but use this as a starting point to your for your Bolt project. You can just prefix the GitHub URL with Bolt.new, and it will import that thing.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah. So in this case, I'm not even sure if this is like a Node project. It has to be a Node toolchain, but it will import it, and you can start prompting. Other than that, you can also, going through StackBlitz would be the play. Just going to Node.new, and you can just drag and drop files here from your local file system. Just don't drag and drop Node modules because this will blow up. But besides that, you open it here, and you can then open in Bolt.
Very nice. And I think that actually brings up kind of a related question too. I don't think I assume. Let me find this question. I assume right now this only works with Expo Go, because you can't compile. You would have to compile a development build, and I don't know, is Bolt able to point to a development build right now? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm out of date on that one, actually.
Well, can you rephrase it?
Sorry, yeah, I was kind of, my mind was going in different directions there. Does Bolt.new's integration currently work with projects that aren't compatible with Expo Go? So if you have a native dependency that isn't inside of Expo Go, can you build a development build and then have will Bolt give you the QR code for that to scan and to run that code on your development build instead of Expo Go?
Oh, not at this moment, as far as I know. Yeah, but it's like, it's, as I said, it's 2 weeks in, so we're exploring like what are the needs. So that would be interesting too, because I think we might have a escape hatch that would allow us to do it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I will just say for Krishna, I mean, I probably without even asking Tomek, I could assure everyone that both on the StackBlitz and Expo side, everybody is thinking about that one. That's a big priority of how do you extend this beyond what it can already do. And of course, you can get a lot started with Expo Go in kind of a sandbox environment, especially scaffolding out UI, and then bring it over, and work on your revenue cat integration inside of your IDE when you download the project. But yeah, I'm sure we'll be getting there.
Yeah. Okay, what other cool questions do we have?
Yeah. Hey, let's get to I think we have a recommendation for this one. Yes. What's a typical? Yeah, that's actually a pretty good segue because we've been talking about transferring from local ID from GitHub to Bolt and back again. What is the workflow, especially from a developer perspective, let's say, as opposed to someone who's a non-developer who's trying to get their whole app out via prompt, but someone who actually wants to, at some point take ownership of the code, but maybe also even give ownership back to Bolt for a bit to generate a new feature or scaffold something out.
So yeah, that's I think one of the best questions we're still like thinking of, even as Bolt users, like being fooding the Bolt. So from what I've seen with our users, people with development experience like to get to basically like 80%, like 80-20 Pareto principle, just go as far as they can without any like issues with a very like, let's say, like trivial kind of features in Bolt. Then they oftentimes actually go local and do the cursor copilot thing, and sometimes then it differs. Like sometimes they do end up back in Bolt, but because of the GitHub integration not yet being like fully native, it can be trickier. So sometimes it's more like a bit going back into that copy pasting thing. There's also like just being able to do this code can get you a long way, and staying in Bolt. So as an example, I am working now on this app that is, but basically the idea is that I want to have the ability to have like this very nice screenshots of keyboard shortcuts, and this allows me to basically do a shortcut of this in like different styles and whatever. And how the work was divided between me and Bolt was like basically the whole UI, including the keyboard here and like the settings, that was all made by Bolt with additional prompting, because like this didn't look good initially. It still could do better here anyways. But it made some assumptions about like it wanted to blur the whole interface, which is nice. It's like a common practice, but I didn't want it to I wanted to show, the preview of what I'm changing, things like that. But the details of these like nice designs, that was like too tricky. So in this, I had to like roll up my sleeves and start working on it. But so it's weird because it's a very very specific part of this, but it's also super crucial. I could download it probably, but it's not such a big code base that represents this. So instead, I just went here and started changing, experimenting with this. And I think by the way, one interesting tip that I came up with, and the way to talk with AIs is initially, the initial version, I just draw it in a design app. I exported this on SVG, and I said to Bolt, use this SVG as a template for our key component. And then I just pasted the SVG, right? So it's kind of going back to, I think, what you said about adding types to JavaScript. It's kind of like a mix of automatic thing and a little bit of creativity where things like Bolt excels, right? So, but it wasn't ideal. There were some like adjustments needed to be made. So I jumped like here and started doing like development things.
So that's actually a good question right there. How does it interpret or prioritize your own custom edits? So as I was going through, kind of an example here, I think maybe I was just using it wrong, but I was going through and very iteratively prompting it through how to make this app. And there were certain points where I'm like, I just wanted to change a color. I just want to change something, or I just want to tell it what the right code is. And I felt the need to, instead of just changing it, I felt like I needed to tell the AI because I was worried that it would like overwrite it. Like I was like, I changed this code. I wrote it in there and I said, please don't change it. And then sometimes it'd be like, it would actually reprocess the file and be like, oh, well, I reprocessed it for you anyway. And I was like, no, I was just trying to tell you, don't touch it. And so, yeah, I was curious, like, what is the right way to do that to make sure, well, I do that better next time.
I heard that somewhere recently, like the AI is great. Like give it an algorithm to write, it will write an algorithm. That's great, even though you would like have struggled with it like 100 times longer. But give it like a file to rename, and it will rename the file and restructure everything inside, right? Whole thing, and it's just like, so yeah, it is a great question, and there are like a lot of interesting practices you can do here. The short story of how it works is that both like the file system and user prompt is treated as an input to the AI. So in that sense, they are fairly equal. Without going into details, like they're very equal. So you do have to. So you wouldn't need to add it to the prompt additionally to your changes. For example, in my case, I like when I switched to like working on this, I was just editing the code. But for example, when I added a prompt to store all the state in Zustand, which touches like every part of the app, obviously. I just like prompted it here. It made its own thing and didn't like break anything from on the UI. So funny enough, a good coding practices help here. So for example, if you have things like colors, like specific values that you're interested in, you could extract it or ask Bolt to extract them into separate file. And then, for instance, let's say that I do have this file that's like this use store should not be touched. You can then, and this could be like my theme settings, for example, instead, right? You can then right click and say log file. and that will add a very emphasized by Bolt instruction for the AI to not touch this file, or people will be hurt, things like that, right? So things like that help. Also, an interesting practice that we found people using is if you have like values like this, you can put them into the project prompt as you're like, if you have like design system tokens like colors or I don't know, specific URLs for the APIs, you could put them here, and that will assure that they are always included in the AI. In this case, actually, interested, going back to your question about the Expo integration, when you prompt, because like before this was empty, now in this case there's a bit more. So you can see that we are on top of those like core prompts. When we figure out that you want to build an Expo app, we add this kind of like good practices, but not like totally needed on top of the system prompt. So you can also modify things to like for example, the icons or things like that. So yeah, I would add these things that you never want to change also here.
Cool. Yeah, that reminds me of a few things so number one, I think what explains what I was doing wrong is AI has a tendency, if you ask it to do something, it does something. AI isn't really geared towards when you ask it not to do something. So that's probably one. But number two, understanding that it is taking the file system account in the way that you described, that it is like noticing that I changed something. And what you were talking about, the refactoring, that ended up being one of my favorite things as I was iteratively building my little Dragon Quest video game mock-up that I was talking about earlier, where I would get to a certain point, I'd be like, well, I have like 3 or 4 different enemies defined that could show up in battles. So please extract that. I would ask it directly. I'd be like, please extract that into a separate file. And then I would lock that file when I didn't want those the attack values or defense values. And I think I noticed at one point before I did that, I was going in and changing the values, and then I would run the game again, and suddenly like all the enemies like wouldn't hit as hard anymore after I changed them. And I realized, but I looked at the numbers and I noticed it did not actually change my values. I think what it actually changed when it rewrote the file, it was changing like some constants somewhere else. So I was probably misinterpreting what it was doing, because it actually did respect my values. So there was a few rounds where I just kept raising. I was like, well, attack, it just has to double again. And the numbers just kept going up. But that's really good to understand that. I think this hits at the existential question, because we're talking about how developers interact with AI. And like, we're talking very much here about developer things. We're not just giving a computer a vague prompt, but we're in conversation with it, and we're injecting developer knowledge. See, I was wondering if you could speak to Zhao's question in here about the future of programming with tools like Bolt, or the future of programmers and how the profession. What's the impact of the profession when you do this sort of thing? It doesn't seem like a replacement, but rather an augmentation. But I won't stick more words in your mouth. I'll let you talk to that.
Yeah, that's a great. I think my favorite maybe way of or example to show when I answer this question, because like obviously a common one, is that how we use Bolt inside of Bolt. Because like, if it's so amazing, we should just build bolts by just prompting, right? But obviously that's not happening because of like several reasons. Like the size of the code base is one limitation, but also and most importantly, the complexity of and the subtleness of the challenges that we have to solve here are not, and I don't think will be able to be solved by AI in the way that developers can, right? So when we in StackBlitz, when we build Bolt, we do it manually. But on the other hand, for example, I'm looking for a good example. I had an idea. I must say, like a pretty vague idea about how to improve user experience in Bolt by providing, because we all know that users don't read manuals, right? We have a big, nice, worked on a support portal that some of our users are using, and they get a lot of value from it. But a lot of users get stuck in here and just are frustrated by some errors that are not getting away. So I thought, okay, I wish we could like integrate the like support portal somehow here. And I had like an idea. I started even drawing it to paste it to Bolt. But what I ended up doing is basically I took a screenshot of Bolt. I pasted it to Bolt as an input, and I described more or less what I had in my mind, because I had a feeling that it would do a better job than me even like designing this in like Figma or whatever. And so no, that's not this. That's here. So as you can see, this is basically like a Bolt UI with a very high fidelity and realistic prototyped feature, right? And I am a developer. Again, like I'm experienced, pretty efficient developer. I would never want to just code this like one-off prototype for Bolt by hand. So this is a very great just supplement for my daily workflow. Like we do it all the time. Like another one of our team, Dominic Elm, who is responsible for like the very core of the AI brain. He wanted to explain better to our team how like some vectors in the like knowledge database work is like beyond me. But he ended up using Bolt to design a lightweight app that you can like tinker with to show like all the vectors and things like that. So I think this is the biggest value for us, for developers. Unless, of course, you have an app like this, an app like that keyboard shortcut thing, when it's a pretty simple app. You will be doing a little bit of coding, but that's it. Besides that, I don't think our jobs are going anywhere, because there still needs to be a lot of like this subtlety that humans are still best at.
Yeah, so covering a lot of ground quickly, so then you can focus on those details. One like example I was thinking about as I was trying to build this note-taking app that had kind of a chat interface to it the other day, and I got to a point where I realized, like, so I was really productive when I was like, make this screen, make that screen, make this third screen, lay out all these controls and add another type of message or whatever. But when I got to keyboard handling, I was trying to tell it things about keyboard handling, and I realized this wasn't actually a productive conversation, because I actually should have just told it to avoid the keyboard handling. And then when I'm ready, I can go fine tune that, because I realized as soon as I saw like it not working, I realized, oh, I'll make it work. And then I realized, oh, actually, once I download this, I'm going to add React Native edge to edge, and then it's not going to work again. So I really need to just put that problem aside. I think it's like a kind of a good exercise in terms of like prioritization. Prioritizing the things first that the AI is good at can actually make you more productive as a programmer, because you are getting the prototype. You're getting a high fidelity prototype, I should add, because it's data backed. You're getting that out there. So now you can drill down into all these individual problems that are between you and shipping.
And again, I think like it's interesting because both like non-developers users and developer users get superpowers, and non-developers, of course, they can now build apps with this, but developer users, when they use it, and after the initial like wow factor like goes maybe away, or we get used to it, we start to remember like development practices. And when like this gives you superpowers in Bolt, because I was trying to find another example, but I was doing an calculator app with like natural language inputs that could do like crazy everything basically for you. And it was a little bit of UI, tons of logic. So I figured I should write a spec and like basically a markdown document and ask Bolt to write unit test for it. And it wrote all the unit tests with vtests. And after that, only we started developing the UI, and Bolt would run, because again, like that's the cool thing. You have here you usually run a dev server. Here you can run the tests, and we got some some errors down the line that were already solved. Typical thing with AI, but because I'm a developer, I know about TDD, so I was just using it inside of Bolt.
Awesome. So yeah, as we're wrapping up here, and kind of maybe talking just a couple minutes before we wrap up about what's next for the Bolt and Expo integration. I wanted to bring up this one real quick question, well, not really a question, but a comment, because I had some success in working around it or fixing it. There's the prompts that Tomek was talking about inside that you can actually modify to talk about like what libraries you want to use or things like that. We had an engineer, Phil, on the Expo side, who made kind of an experimental native wind prompt. And I had a lot of success getting pretty far with scaffolding a native wind app with the other day. So Devjit, if you find me on Blue Sky, I could at least share that with you. I think that's still early, but I think that probably speaks to some of the stuff that's next for the integration, but I'm sure you can speak to even more. But like obviously supporting more of the different, varieties of things that you do in the React Native ecosystem. But yeah, what else is there to look forward to here?
Yeah, as you said, like we're still learning about the like even React Native itself, but also how AI treats this, which is its own beast. So we are constantly expanding that core prompt. But on the feature front, there are some interesting things, especially like very often with the mobile apps, you have a mobile app that is also accompanying a web app. So you might want to have both. And we have a really great Supabase integration where you just basically, no time for demo for this, but if you add like, let's store that thing in Supabase and also add auth, it will create migration files in your code base. So this is also cool for developers. And with the button, there's on top right, there's a connect to a Supabase button. It will ask you to click that button, and it will connect and run those migrations. So that's cool. But then you'll find out that you can only connect a new project to a new database, and you'd probably want to have several projects, in this case a web project and an Expo project, connected to the same Supabase. So this is coming really soon. I know like that was a lot of people asked about that. Another thing, and this will be huge, it's so exciting that we are working on the in-browser native support for deployment of Expo apps. So yeah, it's so amazing. I know it's doable, and I think you've had a great. I know actually I've watched this a great walkthrough. And it's like within 30 minutes there's an app and it's already deployed. But you do need a local and dev environment, right? So the idea is, and I think we're on a kind of brink of this. I don't want to promise any dates, but when you click that deploy button, you will be able to see that in the test environment.
That's awesome. Yeah, really looking forward to all that. Yeah, thanks so much for showing off Bolt to us. It's been a great demo, great talking to you. Of course, folks, check it out at Bolt.new. We have a live stream this Thursday where I'll be on the other side talking on the Bolt or the StackBlitz live stream at 11 a.m. Pacific time on Thursday about Expo for Bolt engineers. So we had Bolt for Expo engineers and or we'll do it the other way around on Thursday. So check that out, subscribe, and I'll look for that live stream as well. And I think that's about it. Yeah, thank you so much again, Tomek, for joining us. And thank you everyone for joining us on the live stream.
Yeah, thanks for great questions and thanks for having me, Keith.
Absolutely. See everybody later.
See ya.